안녕하세요. 꾸준한 영어 테드쌤입니다. 낭독을 물론 계속 해야 합니다. 저는 낭독을 500번을 읽는 게 목표이기 때문에 요 최근에 뭐 컴퓨터 문제나 일 문제 때문에 띄엄띄엄 올라오긴 하지만 제가 안 한 건 아니에요. 녹음을 했다가 파일이 사라지거나 아니면 파일이 이제 이상하게 녹음이 돼가지고 뭐 보는데 뭐 저절로 끊어져 버린다든지 뭐 이런 기술적 문제들이 있었습니다. 제가 기술적으로 많이 약하기 때문에 그런 부분들을 잘 해결을 못해서 한동안 많이 힘들었는데요. 계속 꾸준히 낭독은 했었고요. 자, 그러다 보니까 이제 시도 지금 낭송을 하고 있는데 시도 재밌고요. 요 테드 터크가 굉장히 재밌습니다. 그래서 테드 터크를 그러니까 이게 낭독을 하다 보면 자꾸 여러 가지 말이 하고 싶어져요. 근데 물론 이제 영어가 이제 말하기가 이제 늘어가는 과정이라고 생각하면 좋겠죠. 이게 아이들에게도 느껴질 거라는 생각이 들어요. 그래서 발음이 좋아지고 발음이 좋아져서 귀가 열리고 귀가 열려서 잘 들리게 되면 내가 잘 들린다고 하더라도 100% 다 잘 들리는 건 아니단 말이에요. 아이들이 이제 성장하는 과정에서. 그러면 이 소리를 잘 듣고 싶어지니까 조금 더 재밌고 아니면 조금 더 스피드가 있고 뭐 이런 클립들을 자꾸 찾게 된단 말이에요. 저도 이제 이런 유사한 과정에서 아이들이 커간다. 그리고 저도 조금 더 영어적 발전을 성취한다라는 취지에서 테드 토크를 굉장히 많이 보고 듣는 편인데 그 중에서 재밌는 것들 짧은 숏 클립들은 제가 한번 연습을 해봐도 좋겠다라는 생각이 들었어요. 그래서 이 테드 토크에 보면은 이제 스크립트에 보면은 시간 표시가 다 되어 있단 말이에요. 저도 그분들 속도에 맞춰서 한번 해보면 어떨까 그런 생각이 들어서 낭독 전에 짧은 클립입니다. 이게 한 3분짜리 정도 된 3분 몇 초 정도인데 3분에 맞춰서 제가 한번 읽어보도록 하겠습니다. 그래서 속도나 발음이나 인토네이션이나 전달 익스프레션들이 제대로 전달될 수 있으면 참 좋겠다는 생각으로 연습을 해보도록 하겠습니다. 굉장히 재밌습니다. 이번 짧게 간결하게 얘기를 했는데 한번 읽어보도록 하겠습니다. A secret of success. This is really a 2-hour presentation I give to high school students cut down to 3 minutes. And it all started one day on a plane on my way to TED 7 years ago. And in the seat next to me was a high school student, a teenager, and she came from a really poor family. And she wanted to make something of her. She came from her life, and she asked me a simple little question. She said, "What leads to success?" And I felt really badly because I couldn't give her a good answer. So I get off the plane and I come to Ted and I think, geez, I'm in the middle of a room of successful people. So why don't I ask them what helped them succeed and pass it on to kids? So here we are 7 years ago, 500 interviews later, and I'm going to tell you what really leads to success and makes TEDsters tick. And the first thing is passion. Freeman Thomas said, "I'm driven by my passion. TEDsters do it for love. They don't do it for money." Coletta says, "I would pay someone to do what I do." And the interesting thing is, if you do it for love, the money comes anyway. Work! Rupert Murdoch said to me, "It's all hard work. Nothing comes easily. But I have a lot of fun." Did he say fun, Rupert? Yes. TEDsters do have fun working. And they work hard. I figured they are not workaholics. They are workafrolics. Good. Alex Garden says, "To be successful, put your nose down in something and get damn good at it. There's no magic. It's practice, practice, practice." And it's focus. Norman Jewison said to me, "I think it all has to do with focusing yourself on one thing." And push. David Gallo says, "Push yourself physically, mentally. You've got to push, push, push. You've got to push through shyness and self-doubt." Goldie Hawn says, "I always had self-doubt. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't think I'd make it." No, it's not always easy to push yourself, and that's why they invented mothers. Frank, Gehry said to me, my mother pushed me. Sherwin Nuland says, it was a privilege to serve as a doctor. A lot of kids want to be millionaires. The first thing I say is, okay, well, you can't serve yourself. You've got to serve others something of value because that's the way people really get rich. 야, 2분 11초. 3분이 지났는데 연사가 말을 할 때는 3분 안에 다 얘기를 했었거든요. 근데 저는 한 40초가 남았네. 물론 연습을 안 했다고는 하지만 그러네요. 3분 10초 그죠? 3분 10초. 조금 더 빨리 해야 되겠네. 자, 다시 한번 세팅 한번 해보겠습니다. 스톱워치 해보죠, 뭐. 같이 시간 3분 10초에 맞춰볼 수 있도록 해볼게요. 8 secrets of success. This is really a 2-hour presentation I give high school students cut down to 3 minutes. And it all started one day on a plane on my way to TED 7 years ago. And in the seat next to me was a high school student, a teenager. And she came from a really poor family. And she wanted to make something of her life. And she asked me a simple little question. She said, what leads to success? And I felt really badly because I couldn't give her a good answer. So I get off the plane and I come to TED and I think, geez, I'm in the middle of a room of successful people. So why don't I ask them what helped them succeed and pass it on to kids? So here we are, 7 years, 500 interviews later, and I'm going to tell you what really leads to success and makes TEDsters tick. And the first thing is passion. Freeman Thomas says, I'm driven by my passion. TEDsters do it for love. They don't do it for money. Coletta says, I would pay someone to do what I do. And the interesting thing is, if you do it for love, the money comes away anyway. Work, Rupert Murdoch said to me. It's all hard work. Nothing comes easily. But I have a lot of fun. Did he say fun? Rupert? Yes. TEDsters do have fun working. And they work hard. I figured they're not workaholics. They're workafrolics. Alex Garden says, to be successful, put your nose down in something and get damn good at it. There's no magic. It's practice, practice, practice. And it's focus. Norman Jewison said to me, I think all has to do with focusing yourself on one thing. And push. David Gallo says, push yourself physically, mentally. You've got to push, push, push. You've got to push it through shyness and self-doubt. Goldie Hawn says, I always had self-doubts. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't think I'd make it. No, it's not always easy to push yourself. And that's why they invented mothers. Frank Gehry said to me, my mother pushed me. Sherwin Nuland says, it was a privilege to serve as a doctor. A lot of kids want to be millionaires. The first thing I say is, okay, well, you can't serve yourself. You've got to serve others something of value. Because that's the way people really get rich. Ideas. TEDster Bill Gates said, I had an idea. Founding the first microcomputer software company, I'd say it was a pretty good idea. And there's no magic to creativity in coming up with ideas. It's just doing some very simple things, and I give lots of evidence. Persist. Joe Kraus says, persistence is the number one reason for our success. You've got to persist through failure. You've got to persist through crap, which of course means criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. So the answer to this question is simple. Pay $4,000 and come to TED. Or failing that, do the 8 things, and trust me, these are the big 8 things that leads to success. So, thank you, TEDsters, for all your interviews. 3분 19초. 와, 9초 정도 느리네요. 다시 한번 해보겠습니다. 그리고 저는 아주 급한데 그분은 정말 이렇게 편하게 하셨거든요. 자, 다시 해볼게요. 한 번만 더 해보고 낭독에 들어가 보도록 하겠습니다. Alright. A secret of success. This is really a 2-hour presentation I give to high school students, cut down to 3 minutes. And it all started one day on a plane. On my way to TED 7 years ago, and in the seat next to me was a high school student, a teenager, and she came from a really poor family, and she wanted to make something of her life, and she asked me a simple little question. She said, "What leads to success?" And I felt really badly because I couldn't give her a good answer. So I get off the plane and I come to TED, and I think, geez, I'm in the middle of a room of successful people, so why don't I ask them what helped them succeed and pass it on to kids? So here we are, 7 years, 500 interviews later, and I'm going to tell you what really leads to success and makes TEDsters tick. And the first thing is passion. Freeman Thomas says, "I'm driven by my passion. TEDsters do it for love. They don't do it for money." Coletta says, "I would pay someone to do what I do." And the interesting thing is, if we do it for love, the money comes anyway. Work. Rupert Murdoch said to me, "It's all hard work. Nothing comes easily, but I have a lot of fun." Did he say fun, Rupert? Yes. TEDsters do have fun working, and they work hard. I feared they are not workaholics, they are workafrolics. Good. Alex Garden says, to be successful, put your nose down in something and get damn good at it. There's no magic. It's practice, practice, practice. And it's focus. Norman Jewison said to me, "I think it all has to do with focusing yourself on one thing." And the push. David Gallo says, push yourself. Physically, mentally, you've got to push, push, push. You've got to push through shyness and self-doubt. Goldie Hawn says, "I always had self-doubt. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't smart enough. I didn't think I'd make it." No, it's not always is to push yourself, and that's why they invented mothers. Frank Gehry said to me, "My mother pushed me." Sherwin Nuland says, "It was a privilege to serve as a doctor. A lot of kids want to be millionaires." The first thing I say is, okay, well, you can't serve yourself. You've got to serve others as something of value. Because that's the way people really get rich. Ideas. TEDster Bill Gates says, "I had an idea. Founding the first microcomputer software company, I'd say it was a pretty good idea. And there's no magic creativity in coming up with ideas. It's just doing some very simple things, and I give lots of evidence." Persist, Joe Kraus says. Persistence is the number one reason for our success. You've got to persist through failure. You've got to persist through crap, which of course means criticism, rejection, assholes, and pressure. So the answer to this question is simple. Pay Pop $1,000 and come to TED. Or failing that, do the 8 things, and trust me, these are the big 8 things that lead to success. Thank you, TEDsters, for all your interviews. Alright. 잘하죠? 네. 조금 서툴긴 했는데, 와우, 굉장히, 잘한 것 같습니다. 그죠? 재밌네요. 그 내용도 참 좋지 않습니까? 네. 8가지 이유에 대해서 우리 같이 한번 생각해보는 하루가 되었으면 좋겠습니다. 진짜 열심히 한다. 확신이죠. 밀어붙여야 되죠. 여기서 엄마들의 탄생 이유를 알게 됐죠. 그죠? 엄마들은 푸시하기 위해서 invented 되었습니다. 엄마들을 절대 이렇게 내려서 얘기하는 표현이 아니죠. 재미로 하는 유머입니다. 네, 그렇지만 엄마들이 아빠들보다는 확실히 더 많이 푸시하긴 합니다. 자, 이제 낭독에 들어가 보도록 하겠습니다. Alright. But Nicola, dear rival, I shall never forget the first time I laid these now tired old eyes on our visitor. I had been left at home by the family with the admonition to take care of the house until they returned. That's something they always say to me when they go out. Take care of the house, Harold. You are the watchdog. I think it's their way of making up for not taking me with them. As if I wanted to go anyway. You can't lie down at the movies and still see the screen. And the people think you are being impolite if you fall asleep and start to snore. Or scratch yourself in public. No, thank you. I'd rather be stretched out on my favorite rug in front of a nice whistling radiator. But I digress. I was talking about the first night. Well, it was cold, the rain was pelting the windows, the wind was howling, and it felt pretty good to be indoors. I was lying on the rug with my head on my paws, just staring absently at the front door. My friend Chester was curled up on the brown velvet armchair, which years ago he'd staked out as his own. I saw that once again he'd covered the whole seat with his cat hair, and I chuckled to myself, picturing the scene tomorrow. Next to grasshoppers, there is nothing that frightens Chester more than the vacuum cleaner. In the midst of this reverie, I heard the car pull into the driveway. I didn't even bother to get up and see who it was. I knew it had to be my family, the Murners, since it was just about time for the movie to be over. After a moment, the front door flew open. There they stood in the doorway, Toby and Pete and the mom and dad Monroe. There was a flash of lightning, and in its glare, I noticed that Mr. Monroe was carrying a little bundle, a bundle with tiny glistening eyes. Pete and Toby bounded into the room, both talking at the top of their lungs. Toby shouted, "Put him over here, Dad!" "Take your boots off, you're soaking wet," replied his mother, somewhat calmly, I thought, under the circumstances. "But, Mom, what about—" "First, stop dripping on the carpet." "Would someone like to take this?" asked Mr. Monroe, indicating the bundle with the eyes. "I'd like to remove my coat." "I will," Pete yelled. "No, I will," said Toby. "I found him. You will drop him." "I will not. You will too." "Mom, Pete punched me." "I'll take him," said Mrs. Monroe. "Take off your coat this minute." But she became so involved in helping the boys out of their coats that she didn't take him at all. My tranquil evening had been destroyed, and no one had even said hello to me. I whispered to remind them that I was there. "Harold," cried Toby, "guess what happened to me?" And then, all over again, everyone started talking at once. At this point, I feel I must explain something in our family. Everyone treats everyone else with great respect for his or her intelligence. That goes for the animals as well as the people. Everything that happens to them is explained to us. It's never been just a good boy, Harold, or you the little box chatter at our house. Oh no, with us it's, "Hey, Harold, the dad got a raise and now we're in a higher tax bracket." Or come sit on the bed, chatter, and watch this Wild Kingdom show. Maybe you will see a relative, which shows just how thoughtful they are. But after all, Mr. Mona is a college professor and Mrs. Mona is a lawyer. So we think of it as a rather special household, and we are therefore rather special pets. So it wasn't at all surprising to me that they took the time to explain the strange circumstances surrounding the arrival of the little bundle with the glistening eyes now among us. It seems that they had arrived at the theater late, and rather than trip over the feet of the audience already seated, they decided to sit in the last row, which was empty. They tiptoed in and sat down very quietly so they wouldn't disturb anyone. Suddenly, Toby, who's the little one, sprang up from his chair and squealed that he had said on something. Mr. Monroe told him to stop making a fuss and move to another seat. But in an unusual display of independence, Toby said he wanted to see just what it was he had said on. An usher came over to their row to shush them, and Mr. Monroe borrowed his flashlight. What they found on Toby's chair was the little blanket bundle that was now sitting on Mr. Monroe's lap. They now unwrapped the blanket, and there in the center was a tiny black and white rabbit, sitting in a shoebox filled with dirt. A piece of paper had been tied to his neck with a ribbon. There were words on the paper, but the Monroes were unable to decipher them because they were in a totally unfamiliar language. I moved closer for a better look. Now, most people might call me a mongrel, but I have some pretty fancy bloodlines running through these veins, and the Russian wolfhound happens to be one of them. Because my family gets around a lot, I was able to recognize the language as an obscure dialect of the Carpathian Mountain region. Roughly translated, it read, "Take good care of my baby." But I couldn't tell if it was a note from a beloved mother or a piece of Romanian sheet music. The little guy was shivering from fear and cold. It was decided that Mr. Monroe and the boys would make a house for him out of an old crate and some heavy-duty wire mesh from the garage. For the night, the boys would make a bed for him in the shoebox. Toby and Pete ran outside to find the crate, and Mrs. Monroe went to the kitchen to get him some milk and lettuce. Mr. Monroe sat down, a dazed expression in his eyes, as if he were wondering how he came to be sitting in his own living room in a wet raincoat with a strange bunny on his lap. I signaled to Chester, and the two of us casually moved over to a corner of the room. We looked at each other. "Well, what do you think?" I asked. "I don't think rabbits like milk," he answered. Chester and I were unable to continue our conversation because a deafening crash commanded our attention. Pete yelled from the hallway, "Ma, Toby broke the rabbit's house." "I didn't, I just dropped it. Pete won't let me carry it. It's too big. Toby's too little." I'm not. You're two. Okay, fellas, Mrs. Mooney called out as she entered with the milk and lettuce. Let's try to get it in here with as little hysteria as possible, please. Cheddar turned to me and said under his breath, That lettuce looks repulsive. But if there's any milk left, I get it. I certainly wasn't going to argue with him. I'm a waterman myself. At that moment, the crate arrived, barely standing the strain of being pulled in two directions at once. Ma, Toby said he's gonna keep the rabbit in his room. That's not fair. Harold sleeps in his room. Only sometimes, I thought, when I know he's got a leftover ham sandwich in his drawer. Toby's a nice kid, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't hurt that he shared his stash with me. It was, after all, at one of those late-night parties in Toby's room that I first developed my taste for chocolate cake, and Toby, noting my preference, has kept me in chocolate cake ever since. Pete, on the other hand, doesn't believe in sharing, and the only time I tried to sleep on his bed, he rolled over on me and pinned me by my ears so that I couldn't move for the rest of the night. I had a crick in my neck for days. But he's mine, Toby said. I found him. You sat on him. You mean? I found him and he's sleeping in my room. You can keep smelling all Harold in your room and Chatter too, if you want to, but I'm gonna keep the rabbit in mine. Smelly old Harold? I would have bitten his ankle, but I knew he hadn't changed his socks for a week. Smelly indeed. Mr. Monroe spoke up. I think the best place for the rabbit is right here in the living room, on that table by the window. It's light there, and he will get lots of fresh air. Peter's taller than I am, Toby cried. He'll be able to see the rabbit better. Too bad, Squirt. Okay, said Mrs. Monroe, through clenched teeth. Let's put him to bed and make him comfortable, and then we can all get some sleep. Why? Pete asked. I don't want to go to sleep. Mrs. Monroe smiled a little too sweetly at Pete. Look, Ma, said Toby. He's not drinking his milk. Chester nudged me in the ribs. Didn't I tell you? He asked. Excuse me while I make myself available. Hey, said Toby. We gotta name him. Can that wait until tomorrow? Asked Mr. Monroe. The boys shouted in unison. No, he has to have a name right now. I have to say I agreed with them. It took them 3 days to name me, and those were the 3 most anxious days of my life. I couldn't sleep at all, worrying that they were really going to call me Fluffy, as Mrs. Monroe had suggested. Well, all right, sighed Mrs. Monroe. What about us saying Bum Bum? Uh-oh, there she goes again, I thought. Where did she get them? Yak, we all said. Well then, how about Fluffy? She offered, hopefully. Peter looked at his mother and smiled. You never give a do you, Ma? Meanwhile, Chester, who had also been named Fluffy for a short time, was rubbing against Mrs. Monroe's ankles and purring loudly. No, Chester, not now, she said, pushing him aside. He wants to help us name him, don't you, Chester? Toby asked, as he scooped him up into his arms. Chester shot me a look. I could tell this was not what he had in mind. Come on, Harold, Toby called. You've got to help with the name too. I joined the family and the serious thinking began. We all peered into the box. It was the first time I had really seen him. So this is a rabbit, I thought. He sort of looks like a Chester, only he's got longer ears and a shorter tail, and a motor in his nose. Well, said Pete, after a moment, since we found him at the movies, why don't you call him Mr. Johnson? There was a moment of silence. Who's Mr. Johnson? Asked Toby. The guy who owns the movie theater, Pete answered. No one seemed to like the idea. How about the Prince? Said Mr. Monroe. Dad, said Toby, are you kidding? Well, I had a dog named Prince once, he replied lamely. Prince, I thought, that's a silly name for a dog. We found him at a Dracula movie, so let's call him Dracula. Toby said, that's a stupid name, said Pete. No, it's not, and anyway, I found him, so I should get to name him. Mom, you're not going to let him name him, are you? That's favoritism, and I'll be traumatized if you do. Mrs. Monroe looked in wonder at Pete. Please, Mom, please, Dad, let's name him Dracula, cried Toby. Please, 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 and with each please, he squeezed the Chester a little harder. Mrs. Monroe picked up the bowl of milk and moved toward the kitchen. Chester followed her every movement with his eyes, which now seemed to be popping out of his head. When she reached the kitchen door, she turned back and said, Let's not have any more arguments. We will compromise. He's a bunny, and we found him at a Dracula movie, so we'll call him Bunnicula. Bunnicula. That should make everybody happy, including me. What about me? Muttered Chester. I won't be happy until she puts down the milk. Well, guys, is that okay with you? She asked. Toby and Pete looked at one another. And then, at the rabbit, a smile grew on Toby's face. Yeah, Ma, I think the name is just right. Pete shrugged. It's okay, but I get to feed him. Okay, I'm gonna put the milk back in the fridge. Maybe he will drink it tomorrow. What about Chatter? Toby said, dropping the pretty cat to the floor. Maybe he would like it. Chatter made a beeline for Mrs. Monroe and looked up at her plaintively. Oh, Chatter doesn't want any more milk, do you, Chatter? You've already had your milk today. She reached down, patted Chatter on his head, and walked into the kitchen. Chatter didn't move. 죄송합니다. 우리 꼭지가 밟고 지나갔어요. 다시 찾을게요. 네. It's too big, too bad skirt. Well, alright. 이름까지 정했죠, 그죠? Okay. Well, guys, is that okay with you? She asked. Toby and Peter looked at one another, and then at the rabbit. A smile grew on Toby's face. Yeah, Ma, I think the name is just right. Pete shrugged. It's okay, but I get to fit in. Okay, I'm gonna put the milk back in the fridge. Maybe he will drink it tomorrow. What about Chester? Toby said, dropping the pretty cat to the floor. Maybe he would like it. Chester made a beeline for Mrs. Monroe and looked up at her plaintively. Oh, Chester doesn't want any more milk, do you, Chester? You've already had your milk today. She reached down, patted Chester on his head, and walked into the kitchen. Chester didn't move. Okay, bedtime, said Mr. Monroe. Good night, Bunnicula, Toby said. Good night, Count Bunnicula, Pete said sarcastically, and what I took to be his attempt at a Transylvanian accent. I may be wrong, but I thought I saw a flick of movement from the cage. Good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. I licked at Toby good night. Good night, Smelly Harold. Good night, dumb Chester. I drooled on Peter's foot. Mom, Harold drooled on my foot. Good night, Pete, Mrs. Monroe said, with great finality as she came back into the living room. And then, more calmly, good night, Harold. Good night, Chester. Good night, Kokji. Mr. and Mrs. Monroe went up the stairs together. You know, dear, Mr. Monroe said, that was very clever, Bunnicula. I could never have thought of a name like that. Oh, I don't know, Robert. She smiled as she put her arm through his. I think Prince is a lovely name, too. The room was quiet. Chester was still sitting by the closed kitchen door in a state of shock. Slowly, he turned to me. I wish they had named him Fluffy, was all he said. 아이고, 우리 꼭지가 왜 이래 물어 살까요, 요놈아. 그만 물어라. 참말로, 아빠 죽겠네. 아빠 낭독하잖아, 그렇죠? 아빠 낭독하는 거 봐라. 야, 이 새끼야. 자, Chapter 2. Music in the Night. I feel at this time there are a few things you should know about Chester. He's not your ordinary cat, but then I'm not your ordinary dog, since an ordinary dog wouldn't be writing this book, would he? Chester came into the house several years ago as a birthday gift for Mr. Monroe, along with 2 volumes of G.K. Chesterton, hence the name Chester, and the first edition of Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. As a result of this introduction to literature, and given the fact that Mr. Monroe is an English professor, Chester developed a taste of reading early in life. I, on the other hand, have developed a taste for books. I found Jonathan Livingston Seagull particularly delicious. From Chester's kittenhood on, Mr. Monroe has used him as a sounding board for all his students' lectures. If Chester doesn't fall asleep when Mr. Monroe is talking, the lecture can be counted a success. Every night, when the family is sleeping, Chester goes to the bookshelf, selects his midnight reading, and calls up on his favorite chair. He especially likes mystery stories and the tales of horror and the supernatural. As a result, he has developed a very vivid imagination. I'm telling you this because I think it's important for you to know something of Chester's background before I relate to you the story of the event following the arrival of Nicola into our home. Let me begin with that first night. It seems that after I went to sleep, Chester, still stewing over the lost milk, settled down with his latest book and attempted to ignore the rumbling in his stomach. The room was dark and quiet. This did not prevent his reading, of course, since, as you know, cats can see in the dark. A shaft of moonlight fell across the rabbit's cage and spilled onto the floor below. The wind and the rain had stopped, and as Chester read Edgar Allan Poe's The Fall of the House of Usher, he became increasingly aware of the eerie stillness that had taken their place. As Chester tells it, he suddenly felt compelled to look at the rabbit. I don't know what came over me. He said it to me the next morning, but a cold chill ran down my spine. The little bunny had begun to move for the first time since he had been put in his cage. He lifted his tiny nose and inhaled deeply, as if gathering sustenance from the moonlight. He slicked his ears back close to his body, and for the first time, Chester said, I noticed the peculiar marking on his forehead. What had seemed an ordinary black spot between his ears took on a strange V shape, which connected with the big black patch that covered his back and each side of his neck. It looked as if he was wearing a coat, no more like a cape than a coat. Through the silence had drifted the strains of remote and exotic music. I could have sworn it was a gypsy violin. Chester told me. I thought perhaps a caravan was passing by, so I ran to the window. I remembered my mother telling me something about caravans when I was a puppy, but for the life of me, I couldn't remember what. What's a caravan? I asked, feeling a little stupid. A caravan is a band of gypsies traveling through the forest in their wagons, Chester answered. Ah, yes, it was coming back to me now. Station wagons? No, covered wagons. The gypsies travel all through the land, setting up camps around the great bonfires, doing magical tricks, and sometimes, if you cross their palms with a piece of silver, they will tell your fortune. You mean if I gave them a fork, they'd tell my fortune? I asked breathlessly. Chester looked at me with disdain. Save your silverware, he said. It wasn't a caravan after all. Well, I was disappointed. What was it? I asked. Chester explained that when he looked out the window, he saw Professor Micklewhite, our next-door neighbor, playing the violin in his living room. He listened for a few moments to the haunting melody and sighed with relief. I've really got to stop reading these horror stories late at night, he thought. It's beginning to affect my mind. He yawned and turned to go back to his chair and get some sleep. As he turned, however, he was startled by what he saw. There in the moonlight, as the music filtered through the air, sat the bunny, his eyes intense and staring, and the unearthly aura about them. Now this is the part you won't believe, Chester said to me. But as I watched it, his lips parted in a hideous smile, and where rabbit's buck teeth should have been, two little pointed fangs glistened. I wasn't sure what to make of Chester's story, but the way he told it set my hair on end.